Jesus said, I am the resurrection and I am the life. Those who believe in me, even though they die, yet shall they live. And whoever lives and believes in me shall never really die. For I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end, the first and the last. And I died, and behold, I am alive forevermore, and I hold the keys of hell and death. And because I live, you shall live also. Friends, we've gathered here to celebrate E.B.'s life, or those whom he really liked as Pawpaw, his life. We've gathered here to give God thanks for what he was and who he is in our life today. I want to thank all of you for coming out today. I know that some of you have traveled far to be here to celebrate E.B. Some of you are scouts that have come to celebrate and support his family, and we thank you for being here. My prayer is that as we celebrate E.B.'s life today, that we would discover a sense of God's comfort in ours. That if tears are to be shed, that perhaps we find joy even in the midst of those tears from our faith. And always, when we think of death, we always also understand that we are a people of new life. We are not a people of death, but of life eternal. And that's what we can hold on to today. I want to invite you to bow your head in prayer with me. Gracious and holy God, as we come before you today, I can't help but to think there are many names that we could recall and give you thanks for those that have gone beyond us, for friends and family, for those that we wish that we could see but see no more. Today we add to that list, Lord, E.B.'s name. We thank you for everything that he was, and as we celebrate his life and give you thanks, O God, my prayer is that you'd wrap your arms of love and grace around his soul, that you would give him his just rewards, that you would fill him with your forgiveness, your love, your grace, your joy, and your everlasting life. And especially in this hour, but also in the weeks and months to come, O God, wrap your arms of comfort around his family and around those that love him best. In the name of Christ, amen. E.B. was old school, and he liked the old school music. And so it is appropriate today that we honor him by singing together Amazing Grace. And you'll notice that there are hymn books in front of you in the pews there. If you'll pick those hymn books up, turn to page 378, and we're going to sing the first three verses of Amazing Grace. And if y'all don't sing loud enough, we're going to just keep on singing till I hear it. So let's stand together and let's sing Amazing Grace. Be seated. One of the ways that we celebrate a life in our church is through what we call a time of witness, and we've invited E.B.'s family to come forward and to share some thoughts and some stories about who E.B. was to them. And we're going to start with Ralph and then just work our way down the list. So Ralph, come on up. get my stuff out of your way here.
Sorry, I'm going to have to read this because I can't, well. So good afternoon. My name is Ralph Telford, and I am the oldest of EB's two sons. You might be wondering why we call him EB instead of Dad, and honestly, I have no idea why. That's just how it's always been. One of my earliest and also one of my fondest memories with my dad, EB, was when I was 3 or 4 years old. In those days, he was working as a field engineer for Halliburton in Oklahoma City. He was gone a lot, and about the only way I could spend time with him was just to go along with him to the field. This was way before OSHA regulations. You'd never get away with that these days. I loved it because I got to spend time with him, and he always had an emergency ration kit of cool things to eat that I would never get at home, like sardines or Vienna sausages. So it was a really cold and muddy day, and he had to park a distance from the drilling rig because the car would have gotten stuck in the mud had he tried to drive into the location. He went up to the rig and left me behind in the car, saying he wouldn't be long. After he had been gone 5, maybe 10 minutes, my 4-year-old brain thought he had been gone forever. So I rolled down the window, climbed out to go find him. I made it about 15 yards until I got stuck in the mud. I tried to get loose, but I ended up pulling 1 foot out of my boot, and I just sort of stood there stuck with 1 foot in the air and the other in the boot, hollering for my dad to come get me. And of course, he did. And I guess you could say I followed in his footsteps, both literally and figuratively, because I went on to be a petroleum engineer with over 30 years in the business. From EB, I learned the value of hard work in providing for your family, and this has served me well my entire life. I also learned some slightly questionable things. For example, EB believed that sea breeze could cure pretty much anything topically. Cut your finger, put some sea breeze on it. Rash, sea breeze will fix that. Got a sunburn, sea breeze will make it feel better. He always kept a little bottle handy on the table by his recliner. He also had other wonder healing potions, one called Deep Eat and the other being Vic Salve. Between these 3 items, you could cure almost anything. EB also believed that pretty much any dish can be improved by adding a can of Rotel. Definitely no. However, his minestrone soup was legendary, though in a good way, and so were his fruit cobblers and pecan pies. He also loved to cook up a big pot of beans, which he considered a meal and not a side dish. The side dish was a big slice of cornbread. And those of you who knew EB well knew that he was very serious about his pecans. Not many years after we moved to Amarillo back in 1974, he planted a pecan tree in the side yard. That tree grew over the years and became quite large. The only problem was he had competition for the pecans and all the neighborhood squirrels. Let me tell you, he protected that tree. His pellet gun was always ready by the back door. He even trained his cat, JC, just cat, to come get him when there was a squirrel anywhere in the yard. Those squirrels didn't stand a chance. He'd average between 50 and 60 squirrels a year, with his best year being 67. Well, EB finally gave up squirrel hunting last year. Brett and I and our families lived right here in this area for about 20 years, and you could have knocked me over with a feather when EB finally decided a little while after his 90th birthday that 47 years in Amarillo, he and Carolyn were ready to move on down to Houston. I am so grateful that we've had the last year and a half to be together, whether it was for the holidays or watching Aggie games or just meeting for dinner at El Vaquero. EB, you are a big part of our family, and you'll be missed by all of us. Brett?
All right, so my name is Brett Telford, and we're gathered here to pay tribute to my father. So dads are someone to learn from, someone to respect, someone to talk to, someone to try and impress, but also someone to look up to someone to follow, someone to admire, and someone to be proud of. I can tell you EB fulfilled all those responsibilities and many more, and I couldn't have asked for a better father. EB dedicated his life to our family by performing anything from auto repairs, home repairs. I'm very thankful to have learned from him. We did anything from repairing general repairs in the cars to we'd be out there building a shed, repainting the house, and even re-roofing the house. So quite extensive. With his strong work ethic, he was an excellent role model for me, and I mean, I wouldn't be the man I am today if it weren't for him. So he truly enjoyed spending time with me, even if it required him to do manual labor after a full day's work at the office. So there are many times that after he got off work, I got out of school, he would join me to mow lawns like several days a week. He did it because he wanted to be with me and spend time with me and help. Not once did he want a dime from what I'd earned. Funny story, there was one instance where we were mowing an apartment complex. He sat down for a few minutes to take a break. As he was sitting there, he had a couple ladies come up to him, and he said, "Don't tell him I'm taking a break. He'll fire me. I need this job." and they said, "No, we're not going to say a word." So we also enjoyed spending time with some of his friends. A lot of times during the summer, I would spend 1-2 days in the evening, go fishing with him and some of his customers and friends. And from time to time, he enjoyed playing jokes on people. There was one year, he was about 12 years old, we're at the annual carnival there in Amarillo called Fun Fest, and he saw a close friend, Terry, there at Fun Fest. He was with his girlfriend. This gentleman's probably in his early 30s. So he had me approach Terry. I go up and pull on his shorts and say, "Daddy, Daddy, I need more money." And if you could have seen Terry's expression, it was priceless. Well, that's for another day. Perhaps one of the most important things we share was our love for sports. We had countless times where we watched sports together over the years. We enjoyed watching the Cowboys, the Astros, and the Aggies many, many years. I even remember specifically one game that we watched into the wee hours in the morning. It was between the Astros and the Dodgers, where it went 22 innings. This is in the late 80s. So very, very fortunate that we had that time together. And in the mid-2000s, my wife Angie and I, we went to Picture Day with the Astros, and it happened to fall on Father's Day. So anyway, so my dad was a die-hard Yankees fan. He loved them since he was a kid. And the Astros had recently acquired Roger Clemens. So whenever we got up to Roger Clemens, I approached him and kindly asked him, "Hey, would you mind wishing my father happy Father's Day?" And he agreed to it. So I got my dad on the phone. I didn't tell him where I was or what I was doing. And I said, "Hang on just a second." And I handed my phone to Roger Clemens. And so he said, "This is Roger the Rocket, happy Father's Day." And then he handed the phone back to me. And I said, "Do you know who that was?" And he said, "You darn right I do." I truly cherish the time I spent with EB. Not only has it given me a vast amount of knowledge and a strong work ethic, but he's also given me many more positive skills that have helped me succeed in life. I really appreciate all you coming out to remember my father, EB, and giving me the opportunity to tell you a little bit more about him.
Some of his grandchildren would like to come forward, and I think we'll just start with his most favorite grandchild. So whichever one that is, come on up. I don't have y'all's list of names, so whoever wants to start can start. Okay. So you are the favorite. I saw you. All right, come on up.
Hi, my name is Lauren Telford. I'm Ralph's daughter. I'm the eldest grandchild, and it's really nice to know that so many people cared about my papa. So, my papa loved pocket knives. I can't even begin to tell you how many different cases of knives he's shown me over the years. He had boxes in his safe, and he got magazines and was always asking me if I wanted a pocket knife. And I remember thinking for the longest time, why do I need a pocket knife? I have scissors. I'm not really doing anything that needs a pocket knife. But a couple of years ago, when we were visiting Amarillo, I had asked him about the pocket knives. And I remember my mom said to me, don't ask him too many questions, because he'll sign you up for a lifetime Case Knives magazine subscription, just like he has. But he took me out into the garden room, and he showed me all his different knives that he has sitting in his safe. And I was amazed how he knew every single color, type, and style. I don't think I'll ever be able to talk about something like that. That day, he gave me a red bone trapper and a little red Swiss Army knife. I kept them in my bag, and I soon realized it's actually really helpful to have a pocket knife. Numerous times, I've been in a situation where I need a little pair of scissors, or I need to cut something, and I have the perfect thing to help out. I've had people tell me, I didn't realize you had a pocket knife. That doesn't seem like something you would do. But then I explained to them how my papa always carries a Swiss Army knife and a trapper just like his dad did, and it's actually the smartest thing to do. And I have since converted several of my friends and told them that they need to carry pocket knives. It's not just a guy thing. It's going to be hard without him, but I'm really thankful for the little things that he taught me, and I can carry them on throughout my life and remember him by them. I know he would be happy to know that I can remember him every time I use my pocket knife. I'll miss watching the History Channel, listening to Andre Rieu, and having the Olive Garden soup and salad special with him.
In other words, don't mess with her. Thank you. Come on up. You got this.
Hello, everyone. For those who don't know me, I'm Keely Telford. I am Evie's youngest granddaughter, also Brett's daughter. Evie was a very loving grandfather who always wanted the best for his children and his grandchildren. I know he always enjoyed spending time with all of us and making great memories. I always remember when visiting back in Amarillo, he'd love to go eat breakfast at IHOP, Pancake Station, or Youngblood's. Then after, we'd go back to his house and watch some sports. When I was a kid, I remember watching basketball with him, and he always enjoyed that. When baseball season was around, he'd always, I'm so sorry. When I was a kid, I remember watching basketball with him, and he always enjoyed that. When baseball season comes around, he'd love to watch the New York Yankees, as we know, and he'd occasionally watch the Houston Astros with my dad and I. A lot of times between commercials, he'd put the TV on mute, and we all know that very well. And he'd start talking about squirrels eating those pecans. He had a lot of satisfaction from getting rid of those things, especially since they ate his pecans. He loved those pecans a lot, as we know. We definitely had a lot of good memories with him, and I am very grateful he was my grandfather. I know he is looking down on us and resting in peace.
Thank you, guys. It's not easy to come up here and stare at a bunch of strangers and speak, for sure. They did a good job, didn't they? Did a great job, for sure. I think your pawpaw would be proud. I'd like to share with you a scripture today as we continue to celebrate his life. This comes from John chapter 12, and Jesus is speaking to his disciples, and he says these words. He says, "Truly I tell you, unless a seed falls to the earth and dies to itself, it remains just a single seed. But if that seed dies to itself and becomes something different, then it bears much fruit. Those who love their life will lose it, but those who give their life away in this world will find it for eternity. Whoever wants to be my disciple must follow in the footsteps of my life, so that where I go, they too will go. And God will honor those who follow the example of giving up their life." This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. EB was 92. That's a long life, isn't it? That's a good long life. I guess that's perspective, isn't it? Depends on how old you are right now and how long that is. But I think it's a good life. However, EB's death was very sudden. I think part of the grief that we may be experiencing today is that. It's almost as if a light bulb went out in the middle of a dark room, right? Just random. We weren't ready for it, even though he was 92. It kind of sucks out the life of the room, doesn't it? Especially with someone who had such a bold personality as EB. When that light bulb goes out, you feel the darkness in a different kind of way. Part of why we are here is to grieve that loss. But I can't help but to think, because of EB's wonderful personality, part of why we're here is to celebrate too. Because EB touched us, and he made a difference in our life, and it's a difference that will go with us for a long, long time. We've heard it over and over again already. EB liked his pecans. Which left me with this one question: why in the world pecans? And so I thought a great way to honor EB is to talk a little bit about pecans. Can we do that for a second? I don't want to talk about squirrels, though. EB hated squirrels, but he loved pecans. You know, pecan isn't actually an Indian word. Do y'all realize that? It's actually an Indian word that literally means opens with rock. Isn't that great? Because a pecan is so hard, you have to have a rock that opens it. And by the way, it is pronounced pecan, not pecan. So if you've been saying pecan, you got it wrong. It's pecan, and you have to open it with a rock. Actually, there's many different ways to open a pecan, aren't there? I know that some of the memories of EB's family is to open it with one of those giant crushers, you know, with the metal thing that you pull back in the rubber band and snap it, right? And you can hear the pecan start crying and screaming as that thing is coming to it. Whack! And crush those pecans that way. EB must have cracked thousands and thousands of pecans, giving them away to friends and family and even people that he didn't like. He just gave them away. He had that many pecans. But there's other ways to open a pecan, too. The Indians teach us to crack it with a rock. My grandma said the best way to open a pecan, and I've learned this, is to boil them. You aware of that? Sounds funny, doesn't it? You boil a pecan for about 2 or 3 minutes, and it softens everything, and the outside shell just falls right off. And then that's where you get the whole pecans. Because if you whack it with a rock or a giant missile that comes straight to it, it's going to crush, right? But my grandpa taught me how to open a pecan too, and I think EB probably did this the most, because I know that EB grew up poor. And EB didn't grow up with a pecan crusher. EB had to figure out another way to do it. And the way they used to do it, I've got 2 pecans right here, from my pecan tree in my backyard. I grabbed one of these from a squirrel right out of his hand. I just want you to know that. Is you stick both of them in your hand and you begin to just rub them together. You ever done that? Some of you nod your head. You can't just tighten as tight as you can, because then your hand just becomes like this force of nature, and you'll crack them, but it'll crush them too. But if you rub them together enough, eventually the weakest pecan will crack open and you can get that meat out. I wonder if EB liked pecan because pecan reminded him of himself. If you know EB, you know he had a hard outer shell. He was stubborn. He had his ways. You could have tried to crack him with a rock. Talk about politics. You might have wanted to crack him with a rock. But if you just got close to him enough and just rubbed your life next to his, eventually EB's hard outer shell would crack open, wouldn't it? Inside, you'd find something sweet, something full of love. You'd find laughter. You'd find forgiveness. You'd find joy. But you had to be willing to get that close to EB and crack him open. Not a bad thing, is it? I heard a story one time, a parable really, in East Texas, about a young man who was walking down a dirt road, and he saw this old man with a sack full of pecans. The old man had a sack full of pecans in one hand, and he had a long walking stick in the other. And this old man was walking down this dirt road along this edge, and every once in a while he'd just jam that stick into the ground and make a hole, pull out a pecan and drop it in that hole and kick some dirt over it and keep on walking. Finally, the young man caught up to him and said, "Hey, mister, what are you doing?" He said, "I've been planting pecan trees along this road." The young man thought about it for a second. He started to chuckle, and he said, "You know, it's going to take years and years for those pecan trees to grow for you to enjoy the fruit. Quite honestly, you're too old for this. You're never going to enjoy these pecans." And that's when the old man looked at the young man and said, "Yeah, but you don't understand. I've spent my whole life eating other people's pecans. Someone else came before me and dropped some pecans, and I've been enjoying them, so I thought before I die, I might as well drop a few pecans myself." I wonder if that's E.B. Here's my question for you today. What pecan did E.B. give you? What did he invest in your life? What did he drop into your life that he'll never see the fruit of? And yet, even though he's gone, it continues to grow. His hard work ethic? His love for other people? His pride? His love for the country? What was it that he gave you? Keep rubbing those things together. Crack them open. Let that tell you who E.B. really was. The best thing that we can do today is not to be in church to celebrate E.B.'s life, quite honestly. We ought to be underneath the pecan tree somewhere picking those pecans up before the squirrels get them. Or we could be cooking a big old barbecue. Or anywhere we could gather together and celebrate because E.B. loved people. Here's the good news. E.B. lived a long, good life. He did. Came from nothing. Made a life. Made a beautiful family that we see here. God knew E.B. before we did. God planted in E.B. the very thing that he needed, his grace. And God has never left E.B. his entire life. And God does not leave E.B. now. He continues to give him love and grace. And that same God loves us. Thanks be to God for that. Amen. because then I'd have to sing solo. Well, after the service here, I'm going to close it with a dismissal, and the family has invited all of us to come to 105 room, which is right directly behind me here. We're just going to go through these doors here and go there. There's cookies and coffee, and we're inviting everybody to stay a while, have a little reception, share some stories, and just share the love of the community. Again, thank you for coming out today. It really does make a difference if you're here. So now I invite you to stand with me, and let's close the service with this benediction. God has not called us to be a people of death, but a people of life. He is enjoying that life in a new way. But now I invite you to go into the world and be a people of life. Rub yourself next to each other. Keep on holding on to each other and grab it. Amen.